Hello and welcome to In the Therapy Room podcast with your host. I'm Kelly Oliver Dougall. This episode features an interview with Louise Woodward Styles, and we do talk about some sensitive issues which may upset some viewers.
Hello, Louise. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. Yeah, my name's Louise Woodward Styles, and I'm a mother and a women's rights activist.
Excellent. And how did you get into that?
How could you not get into women's rights activism? As a girl growing up in the 90s and then finding out what's happening to women's rights around me, I just had to speak out about it.
Yeah. So at what stage did you really get into it? Have you always been involved, or is it something that happened that sort of made you think, oh,
yeah,
that's not right?
I kind of didn't have any feminist role models growing up. I'm from a very inner city, the city of Salford, very rough and tough, working class. And if you ever spoke about being a feminist or women's rights, you got told to shut up. We don't do none of that nonsense here. So it's kind of like going against the grain in a way, being working class and speaking up for women's rights. So yeah, growing up in the girls era, so girl power was my first taste of feminism, and that was so powerful for young girls, seeing that kind of woman speak up and be defiant, and then the ladette culture of the 90s made tomboys like myself feel like we had a place, we had a right to speak up about what we cared about.
Yeah, that sounds really empowering. And obviously, I remember the Spice Girls and the ladder culture, but I was a bit more of a girly girl, so I got it, but I didn't. It wasn't really me, the ladder stuff.
Yeah. It would have been easy to also kind of cross that divide of aggressive female power and trying to justify all kind of social stereotypes. But, the ladette culture was very much just women taking control of our own careers and our own voices. And that's what we're doing right now, is women taking control back of the decisions that are made about our lives without consulting women. And then when they do consult women, they're consulting only a certain type of woman. That's the issue.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a class divide in the women's rights movement. Yeah, there's a definite thing there, isn't there? And I think working class women are starting to speak out a lot more than they used to.
Definitely. And it's a demographic of women that really need to be heard, because, social class is not spoken of, and it needs to be spoken about, because so women like myself, I didn't have a very good education because I was living through trauma, an ongoing childhood trauma, and later on in teenage years being a survivor of sexual abuse. And when you're trying to live through that, education is not possible, to really absorb information, and because you're too busy, you're living in fight or flight mode constantly. So I had no chance of really excelling myself in education. So when I left school at 15, because I'm an August baby, so I was always the youngest of the class.
Right.
And we did our exams in the May, and my birthday wasn't until the August. So I left at 15, but I did get 9 GCSEs, and that was like English literature, because I loved English, I loved history, I loved religious studies. Believe it or not, but my mum used to say, "What use is that? Are you going to be a nun?" I was like, but religious studies was based around sociology as well, and how we were growing up in a society. So I loved things like that. So that's why I've always loved to speak to people and get to know people and fight social justice, and that goes back to being a feminist as well, is if you can't fight for us, you can't define us, you can't fight for us, you have no recourse to protect women. If you can't define us, you have no right to protect us or try and control us.
Yeah, that's definitely it, isn't it? And if you include men in the definition of women, then what does it mean?
Well, that means men have all the rights, doesn't it? It means they have every single right that's up for grabs, and women have very little left. And to be honest, it's respectful to what women truly go through in life. We cannot identify out of this oppression that women have always lived under. You know, we can't identify out trafficking and rape and sexual abuse and surrogacy, and everything that happens to a woman happens to her because she is a woman.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about the word feminist, because I think I used to call myself a feminist, and then I thought this isn't really what I think of when I think of what my values are. So when I was trying to express what my opinions were, if you use the word feminist, it comes up with a connotation. So I stopped using the word. Although I've always been quite passionate about women's rights, how could you not be with it when you're a woman? But how was it for you? Did you feel like that, or are you quite happy with using the word feminist?
Feminist was almost, it got took over by celebrity, didn't it? So pop culture and celebrity kind of took feminist as a cause and a selling tool. So to me, to be a feminist is how you treat other women and how you want to portray yourself as a woman of confidence. It's been sullied somewhat because you'll have certain women say, I'm not a feminist, and you'll have certain women, and it's because of the feminists that are giving women's rights away to men. That's what's happened, is they've really tarnished what it is to be a feminist. Because when you include men in the word feminist, then intersectional feminism has been the greatest poison that's happened to women's rights.
Yeah, as well, though, that one of the reasons that I stopped sort of calling myself a feminist was because of the kind of class divide, and I didn't align with the sort of middle class, if you want to put it like that. I think it's really hard to define working class and middle class these days. However, I think my background is working class, although our family has strived, is that the right word? Strived to get better and do better and have more and achieve more and stuff like that. But I've come in and out of those social classes, if you know what I mean. I'm kind of on the cusp, but I kind of feel like I have a foot in both camps, if you like. I think that was one of the things that for me. Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the sexual abuse that you went
and
through?
it's an important part of this actual the fight that I found, is because there's so many different areas where I've been affected in life by things that happened to women and girls. And you know, growing up, I didn't have a close relationship with my mum. I was one of 5 siblings, and I was the second eldest.
That's a big family.
It is. I was the second eldest, so I came along in 85. It wasn't a great start, and there was no bond between baby and mum. And that's really crucial. What people need to understand is, if you're missing that bond in those crucial first years, it's very difficult to recreate that. And growing up as a child, knowing that you're not loved or feeling unloved, and then it was kind of like physical and emotional abuse at home. And there's all sorts of reasons behind it, which as a mother now, I can kind of be forgiving of that and come to terms with it, you know, because I kind of understand, like, I have stress with being mother of 1 child, but being mother of 5 is a complete different kettle of fish. And obviously everything that entails. So I was a very abused child. The psychological abuse was more damaging to me than the physical abuse, because that allowed men to see me as the vulnerable young girl that I was, the little girl. And I used to wander the streets, and I had no friends because I was bullied. I had no safe place at home. So I would give these men easy access to me because I just wanted to be loved. Any kind of contact was a form of love for me. I was like, I needed it, and I didn't see the danger in it. So when I was 13, I kind of spotted that there was a new takeaway opening at the top of the road. And I went, as usual, I introduced myself, very friendly. And this man kind of used that to his advantage and offered me to come back for free food when it was open, and come and see us, or, you know, what I'm doing to do the takeaway open. You know, I'll even give you a job if you need to do anything. And anyway, that was the grooming process. That's where the grooming starts. And I introduced myself as being 13 years old. very day that he met me, he knew how old I was. And then the grooming process started. He gave my sister a job, she's 3 years older than me, so he gave her a job, which then gave him access to the family, and more greater access to me as a 13-year-old, and the sexual abuse started straight away. And yeah, but at the time we were going through a process at the home where my nana was in palliative care, and so because I didn't have a relationship with my mum, and I was terrified of her, like terrified, I couldn't come to her and say, she wasn't my safe place. So I had nobody to turn to with these things that were happening. And you're very confused at that age as well, because you see an older man giving you that kind of attention as you think it's an adult thing. And it's good because it means you're an adult. And when you accept monetary exchanges during that process, you then take the blame on yourself. You're like, well, I took the money, I took the food, I was the one that went there. So you almost shame yourself into silence because you're like, I've done something wrong. And it went on for like 18 months, and it did lead further and further, and it was rape. And you kind of get to a point where you kind of know it's wrong. And I was 40, like coming into 15, turning 15. And I'd kind of had a breakdown at school because I'd lost my nana. My nana had died during this process. My granddad was also dying at the same time. My mum was completely bereft and trying to manage a household. I had younger siblings. I had baby brothers, like really baby brothers at the time. They were only born like 14 months apart or something. So it was a very busy household. And I was still being emotionally abused as well at the time, and threats of violence and stuff. So I just kind of disclosed to the teacher in school because I was being bullied for being a lesbian. Ironically enough, I was being sexually abused and raped, and also being bullied for being a lesbian because I fallen in love with a girl in class, and she photocopied my love letter and put it around school.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. After studying Romeo and Juliet together, I thought it was a sign. So yeah, that was a betrayal. And so I broke down in class and spoke to the teacher, and obviously then the safeguarding process kicks in. So yeah, it was, I only disclosed because I felt like he was going to find somebody else because it kind of reached the point of that kind of thing. And he wanted to pass me around to his colleagues at the takeaway. That was kind of like my big alert, was like, something's going to happen here that I can't get away from. And so, yeah, the police were really, really good. Greater Manchester Police were really good at the time. And I think if they were new to it themselves, and it went to court, but unfortunately the court process made me out to be, I was on trial, not him. And at 15 years old, my life was on trial. Things in my life that I had no idea about because I was a child. And they used all this, and they used dysfunctional family issues as apparently my reason for spreading lies. So yeah, he was found not guilty on insufficient evidence, which was ironic considering once the court case was over, victim support and this police rang us and told us that he was on a list of known grooming gangs. He was a part of a grooming gang that had been moved on from and moved to Salford, and he moved to Salford to join another grooming gang and expand the network. And I was the cannon fodder for failings down in Yorkshire. So because he wasn't picked up there, he came to Salford and was able to have access to girls like me. So that was a bit of a blow, a blow when you find it out. And I just we never spoke about it again. As a family, we never spoke about it again. And yeah.
Do you know, when you've told me that, I just feel so angry. It makes me feel so angry that nobody protected you.
No.
And they blamed you. Because when you, as a woman, like sexual contact, it's something that helps you feel connected, and it's you equate it to love.
Yeah.
And when you're so young, you don't know the difference between those two things, do you? But for men, it's not like that.
No.
But for women, it is.
Yeah.
And for little girls who are confused about what's going on and who are starved of affection, that is so, it just makes me so angry to think that
I'm glad you've said
nobody
that.
looked after you.
That starved of affection thing is so pertinent to why you are so vulnerable, because, you know, I was so starved of love at home. Like, I wanted to run away every single day. I wanted a new family. I wanted a mum to love me. And when you've not got that in your only place that's supposed to keep you safe and loved, and then you're getting it from somewhere else where you know it's a danger, you know it's not okay and it shouldn't be happening, but you're like, is this love? Is this what it's supposed to be? And because you're also being taken care of at the same time, so the grooming process is so very particular. They know what they're doing. So for me, it was like the food thing. So it being a takeaway owner, wow, at the time you're like, I can get my friends free food, and he's giving me money, and I never got pocket money as a child. And that was a social stigma that I had to also overcome. I was being bullied for not having pocket money, being bullied for not having nice clothes. So he would buy clothes and give them to my mum and say, oh, this is for Louise, because his daughter had grew out of it, and just things like that. And you kind of understand what's happening, but because you feel like you're benefiting from it, you also don't want to reject it as well, because that's the only way you're going to get them things. So you do feel like it's a trade-off in a way where you think, okay, it must be my fault as well. I must have invited it. But as we now know as adults, no child can consent to this. No child deserves to have to also answer for those things as well. You know, like, oh, well, did you take money off him? Well, yeah. Well, that means you must have liked it. That's the questioning that I was given, like, and why did you go back? That's what hurts survivors, is the why did you go back? Why did you not say anything? And there should be no why. There should never be any why for a child. It should be how. How did they get away with this? How were they able to have access to you? And why are we still allowing it to happen in 2024? The same things are still going on right now.
And you know, it sounds like it's getting worse. It feels like it's getting worse. I don't know if it's just because I'm becoming more aware of it, but, you know, these high-profile men in the news, like Hugh Edwards, and he's been found I mean, I haven't even looked into it because it's so horrific, but I think he's been found guilty. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
But he's just got a suspended sentence, yet people who post on social media are in prison.
It shows you the value.
It
shows you the value that children's right to grow up unsexualized with no sexual contact with anybody. They don't take that serious, because it's bigger than you or I. It's bigger than anything we could comprehend, unless the world takes it seriously and doesn't call it child porn, because there is nothing pornographic about it. This is abuse and rape of children for the predilection of men and some women who engage in this. Unless you could call it out and speak clearly and concisely about what it is, we cannot tackle it. But yeah,
absolutely,
I did really, the thing is, I always speak openly and honestly about the grooming and the rape and the sexual assault, because for me, that wasn't the most damaging era of my life. Then the being an unloved child was. The being a battered child, being a broken child who was eating out of bins because I was forced to have packed lunches that I didn't like. So it was a power thing with my mother. It was a power thing. You will do as you told. So I used to eat out of bins after dinner time because I couldn't eat the sandwiches because they made me sick. And it was still forced on me every day.
That sounds I can't imagine what that must have been like for you. So you must have had things in your life as a consequence of growing up like that.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, when you when you come into the world and you feel like you're alone completely, you learn to guide yourself. You're your greatest protector. And that's what I love about what I do now. It's because I know that I'm doing it for the right reasons. There is absolutely no hate in me for anybody who wants to live a kind of life, a life that allows them to feel safe. But it should never come at the cost of other people, of other women's and girls' safety and dignity. Because then we're colluding in a dangerous path of lies, and we're twisting reality to suit a narrative that's just not real. And that's becoming a mother of a little girl was an awakening for me, because you see
Definitely.
all
It does
these
change your
vulnerabilities.
perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It really, really does. You don't understand like the enormous responsibility you have as a woman, not just as a mother, but as a woman. You're like, we've got to protect these little girls every single day of their lives from dangers that we open. And we're having women opening the door, allowing potential danger. They try and say, not all men. And not, trying to.
We don't know which men.
Exactly. We don't know. Even the good men, the so-called good men, are now being shown to not be good men.
The thing is, good men don't want to access women's toilets. I mean, I'm married and my husband would be horrified at the thought of going into a woman's toilet.
Yeah.
And he'd be worried that he would make us, like, women uncomfortable. And he'd be worried that he might be accused of something that he didn't, do you know what I mean? That he wasn't doing.
Yeah.
He'd be worried about all sorts of things about going into a woman's toilet.
Mhm.
So he doesn't want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of men feel uncomfortable, but it's becoming more normalised. Even I've noticed men cleaning women's toilets.
Mhm.
That started gradually creeping in
Yeah.
to normalise men being in women's toilets. And of course, it's not just toilets.
Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it? And they talk about these very basic things as though we're making a big deal of it. Like, oh, it's just a toilet. We just want to wee. Okay, well, if you just want to wee, why is it so important for you to take this space away? If you just honestly want to wee, why don't you go to the male cubicle? Why don't you go to the third space? And it's not about being accepted. It's about forcing it upon somebody. It's about breaching that boundary constantly. And that's why women do have to say no. These irrelevant spaces that you talk about, like leisure centres, toilets and stuff, if it's also irrelevant and so unimportant, why are you demanding access to it? Why is it so important to you? Because you're breaking boundaries. You're overstepping the mark into what's exactly right and what's not. Society has developed this way because it has a reason, it has a purpose. Male and female toilets are there for a purpose. Otherwise, we would always have had unisex toilets.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so yeah.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about what sort of things you're involved in to try and change what's happening to women?
Yeah.
Because obviously we've never met in person. I've seen you a lot online and I see your content and what you post. I know that you went to an event. Was it last weekend?
Yes, I did.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was just this week.
It was. It just Saturday just gone. It was Lesbian Strength Leeds 2024. It was brilliant. Yeah. So I started following gender critical topics of conversation probably about 7 years ago now. And I was kind of curious because I was interested in what was going on, and I knew of a couple of lesbians that had transitioned, and I was all like very supportive. I was like, oh, right, okay. Because I know what it's like to grow up uncomfortable with your body, especially breasts. And I was and they were saying they were going to have top surgery, and I was like, okay. And I kind of was kind to them because I was like, well, it clearly makes them happy. And then I started to think about it a bit more, and I was like, but she's still with a girl, but now he's calling himself he, but he's always going to be a girl, and he's still a lesbian. So I could see like the lesbian community like being dismantled bit by bit, and it concerned me, and I was like, okay, as a lesbian, what does that mean for me? And there was a publication, a magazine that was the only lesbian magazine in the UK that had gone LGBTQIA plus across it and were advertising trans women on their covers. And I was thinking, there's something not quite
So
right.
do you mean men?
Yes, just men on a lesbian.
Trans women mean men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lesbian.
Just to be clear, it confuses me, and I know the language, and it still confuses me.
And do you know why it confuses? That it's designed on purpose to confuse. So, because as soon as you add the word woman to anything, people just think woman. That's why when they say trans women, people just hear the women bit. They don't think of trans. What does trans mean? They're just hearing women. So that's why we have to just say man, male.
Yeah. So this magazine's putting men on the cover,
Yes.
saying they're women.
Saying they're women. And it's part of this new kind of fresh lesbian community, queer. So we're not lesbian anymore, we're queer, apparently so. But growing up, if you got called queer, it would be followed by a spit or a punch or a kick or your door being, peed on. Because queer was always a very derogatory term. Nothing that any lesbian would shout with pride. So yeah, I noticed things were happening in the community and I wanted to look a bit more into it. And then I came across, of course, Kelly J. Keen, Rosie Parker.
Yeah.
And she spoke like me. She had a similar personality to me. And I loved that. I could get with that because I couldn't look up to academics in the feminist circles and think she speaks for me because most of the words I didn't understand. I'm just a Salford lass who had no idea what any of this meant. But Kelly J. Keen was a voice like mine, and I could get with that. And I was like, actually, she talks a lot of sense. So I started following it. I started coming across other works of what women were doing out there. And it kind of snowballed from there. I kind of started finding my voice a bit more, started reading more work, reading great classic feminist books. So Germaine Greer is a great icon, a heroine of mine. Germaine Greer. Julie Bindel has always worked in for women who are incarcerated, great social justice campaigner for women, great women's campaigner. So I loved Julie Bindel's work growing up. And you have to look at all different aspects of what women's rights is and feminist culture is. And you take what talks to you, what speaks to you is what will embolden you to carry your own message forward. So Kelly J. Keen, she gave me the confidence. And then I went to my first ever women's rights event in Leeds in November last year, November 2023. I don't know if you were there, but it was amazing.
I was, yes.
That was me. Yeah. That was me. I did my first ever public speaking at Let Women Speak Leeds. And I spoke about, the handmaidens, we're coming for you because you're the ones that are telling young girls to lie. You're allowing this to happen and we will call you out on it. And we will take you down when time comes when people have to pay for it. You are not going to get away with saying, well, I'm just a woman, because you're also enabling this. We teach children to tell the truth. And then when you're now teaching children to call Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Wilson, because he's come back in after the summer off and now he's coming in a dress, we can't allow this. Because when you remove truth, you remove all foundations of safeguarding for children. So
that's what really concerns me. It's safeguarding, not just children, though, adults as well.
Yes, exactly. And I've worked in social care all my life. I've looked after vulnerable and disabled adults, both women and men, but mainly women. And when I see what they're trying to do in social care and they're trying to remove sex-based requests as gender, it terrifies me because I know what elderly women deserve, and I know some of them have never had any man touch them in their life. And to now say that anybody who works in social care who identifies as a woman can give that woman single-sex care is abhorrent, because you're removing that woman's rights to say no. And as a vulnerable adult already, they need more advocates. I will be the advocate. I will take that fight for her because a lot of women don't know what it means. They don't know what elderly, especially the elderly, they don't know what gender is. They're just man and woman, and that's it. And they know what a man is. So yeah, there's so many different areas. You know, I'm a social care worker. I'm an advocate for the elderly. I'm a sexual assault and rape survivor. I've survived adult poverty. You know, I left home at 6 because of the situation that I was living in, and I'd been working since I was 15. I left home at 16, and I lived, you know, hand to mouth, sometimes surviving on £20 a week. You know, I used to eat at work, and then just survive on very little. Go to work, come home, living in bed sits, and then getting into relationships that were not good for me because they were with a lot older women. And again, I think it's because I thought they would take care of me.
Yeah, you were looking for a mother figure.
Yeah, in a sense, I thought I was at the time. It makes sense to me now. At the time, it was very much enamored by the romantic prospect of falling in love. But these women also didn't love me. And it was reopening those wounds of being abused. And, you know, I'm so glad now that I'm the woman that I am, because you have to experience these things as well to understand what it is to respect yourself. Unless you love yourself, you can't ask that of anybody else to love you. You've got to love yourself first, and then you can be your best human being ever, best woman ever. And that will naturally attract good people.
I think it's hard to love yourself when you don't have that, you haven't experienced it from someone else.
Yeah, definitely. Because you feel like
Really difficult.
you're not going to be able to, you're not lovable. I always felt I'm not lovable. Nobody wants, because I've always got the inner voice of my mum saying, nobody wants to hear you, nobody wants to speak to you, nobody wants to see you. So like we would visit family members, and I'd always get warned beforehand, you sit down and you shut up. No one wants to see you, no one wants to speak to you. You're an attention seeker. Stay in that corner. Don't be looking at anybody. And that almost still goes through my mind daily and occasionally. I have those little voices, and I'm like, no, Louise, you are a good woman. And what you have to say is helping other girls and other women who also feel like they don't belong anywhere and that they don't have a voice. And it's like, I learned that I have to be true to myself, and I have to be the change that I want to see for other women and girls.
Definitely.
Because if you can't do it, you can't look for it. You can't ask for it. That's what I take from this every day. You know, this women's rights activism. I don't care about being called a TERF. I don't care about being called a bigot or a Nazi. I mean, the actual Nazis must be absolutely pissed off to see us being called Nazis, because they're like, what? We're like them? We're like these people? And it's so absurd. You have to laugh about it, because if you don't laugh, you'll go crazy. Because it's so funny.
Definitely.
You're like, really?
Yeah.
We're Nazis? You know, I did go and put my recycling out because I care about the environment, and I'm a Nazi. You know, make it make sense.
You know, the humour from other women is what keeps me going. It's so funny. Like some of the things that women come out with, and in men as well, like Mr. Menno's hilarious.
Beautiful. Mr. Menno is
great.
a gift.
And
this so honestly, this we call it it's not the community because it's very different. We know there's so many different people in it, but the best thing is that we're all from very different backgrounds. We all have our own stories to tell, but when you get us together, it's such an energy. Like Lesbian Strength on Saturday, we had afterwards and during it, we're just really, really decent, good people. Lots, you know, these women, we have a unity that you cannot fabricate. You cannot, it's not a cult. It's not it's not for Big Pharma. It's not for the benefit of Big Pharma or for companies to jump on the back of, because it's organic, it's natural. It comes from a very real place, and that's your honest truth. And that's the reality of living as women, the reality of raising young girls and wanting to see our daughters have a healthy, better relationship, not only with their bodies, but with society as a whole. You know, if we give up now, our daughters will have nothing left.
it's so horrifying to me that girls are having to share toilets with boys.
Yeah.
Well, even for boys to share toilets with girls, it's just
Yeah.
just everything inside me says that's wrong. And nobody asked anyone. Like, nobody asked the girls. Like, you know, during my election campaign, I was giving out leaflets and we came across some girls who were too young to vote, but I still wanted to talk to them. I wanted to ask them about that.
Mhm.
And I was talking to them and they said they didn't like it, but nobody had asked them and they were too scared to say anything.
Yeah. And it's wrong, isn't it? Because we teach our girls to speak up if you feel uncomfortable about anything. And if a boy's going, you know, these gender neutral toilets are an abomination, because not only do the girls deserve privacy, the boys also deserve privacy, because we also have boys that are bullied by their peers for bodily functions, for growing up, and when they go through puberty, boys are tormenting each other about aspects of their bodies. But girls also were going through their period. Now, I know what it's like. Being on your period in school is horrific. It's not good. You try not.
It's
It's not about
embarrassing, isn't
PE.
it?
Yeah, it's not about PE lessons anymore. It's about everything. So to have to change your menstrual products in school was traumatic back in the 90s. So imagine what it's like now, and everything from opening. Let's say we're women opening the wrapper of a Tampax, opening the sanitary towel product. Everything. It's noisy. It's messy. You know, we can't wash around these issues of like, it's not an always advert. It's not your body form advert. We're not laughing coming out the cubicle, are we? We're not like, oh, this is beautiful.
No.
What a wonderful day. I'll go and ice skate. No, it's horrific. We have period pains and these young girls don't know how to address it. And they've got the issue of not being able to even do it in private. You know, what are we doing? What are we doing? All to appease the mental delusion and the insanity of one young boy or two young boys who are victims of a cult. Let's call it what it is. And those boys, yes, I am sad for them that they've been taken in by this, but they need to be dealt with separately, because they are not more important than the 51% of the population in that school. You know, if that makes us hateful, let's get hateful, because we need to get real about this. You know, we care about our young boys.
There's nothing hateful. There's nothing hateful about speaking the truth.
That's it.
And that's all we're doing.
That's it.
Saying that's a girl and that's a boy,
Yeah.
like, or that's a man and that's a woman.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you brought up about speaking to the schoolgirls, because I also approached some schoolgirls who were watching the lesbian strength speeches, and they were all like watching, and they were like, lesbian, and they were giggling because the word lesbian is still funny when you're a teenager. And I went over and spoke to them and disarmed them straight away with, you're right, girls, do you want to know what's going on? And we started to talk about gender ideology in their school. I said, do you have anyone in your school that like says that they're a boy or a girl? And she's like, yeah, there's a boy who comes in our toilets who thinks he's a girl. And I'm like, how do you feel about that? And they were like, well, we don't really like it, but you know, we can't say anything. I said, yes, you can say something. I said, why is he allowed to take away your space? And they were so like passionate about listening about what we were talking about. And they were like, well, what is trans? And I explained what's behind it. And they were like, well, that's stupid, isn't it? I'm like, exactly. Do you think any boy can have a baby? Do you think a boy can get pregnant? No. They're like, where would it go? I said, exactly. I said, it's insanity. But we had a really, really good conversation, and it gave me hope that they weren't swallowing it. They don't believe it.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, well, do we have to accept it? Do we have to put up with it? And I said, no, you don't. I said, learn to say no, girls, and do it collectively. I know it's scary when there's one girl that just says no and nobody else speaks up. I said, but if you do it as a group, there's greater strength in numbers and your voice will be heard. And it has to be heard when you do it as a collective, because there's strength in numbers. And they loved it. They went away smiling, and that's what it's about. That's what these actions on the ground does for grassroots women's rights activism.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know what a feminist is, they know what a woman is, and they know that a woman's just come and spoke to them because she wants to protect them.
I think that's so important. And I think it's important for, you know, all of our voices are really important. I think it's important that we talk to like lesbians and gay men, and because you've got a different perspective. And I've been accused of being homophobic. I'm like, what?
Tell us
Like,
that.
trans is the most homophobic thing ever.
Yeah, it is. It's transing away the gay. You know, there will be no lesbians
Exactly.
and gay people left if this is allowed to continue, because that's what they're doing. Is they're putting young lesbians on a pathway of medical malpractice for life. I mean, how can you tell a young girl because she's attracted to girls that she must be a boy? Is that not lesbophobic? I'm pretty certain it is, because if this was around back then when I was growing up, I would have fallen hook, line, and sinker for it. I would have been trans in a heartbeat. And the reason being, because the reason why I wasn't and couldn't have been was because my mum would have beat it out of me. She would have been like, stop being so ridiculous. It's another form of attention seeking. You know, and that's the God honest truth of it. I would have been mocked. And living a lie mustn't be very comfortable. We know these people are in distress. We understand it because you're living a lie. You're having to pretend every single day.
You don't address mental health issues with a physical change, though.
No.
Usually, but except when it comes to this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's been this. It's tied up in so many different areas. So women, you know, this women's rights campaigning that you do, that I do, it isn't just solely focused on one area of keeping men out of women's spaces. It reaches into every different aspect of a woman's world and a woman's truth. You know, we've got domestic violence, we've got coercive control, we've got social poverty, we've got, you know, inequality of job prospects, and they're taking every single bit that women have fought for away. And if we can't tackle that and stand up and say, we're not letting you do that. And it comes back down to the very basic foundation of language. When you call he a she, he then has the right to demand everything that's yours.
Exactly.
And it's as simple as that. And that's why people are so very passionate about the pronoun thing, you know, using the wrong pronouns for people. Because when you start at the bottom and you sow that seed of lies, then you can't go back. You can't wind it back and say, I'll let you have this bit, but I can't let you have this bit. You're undoing yourself. You're doing yourself an injustice there. It's the very foundation of it. We say no, and that's it. We don't have to give them our life story either. We don't have to tell them of your sexual trauma, why I don't want you in my rape crisis group. You know, you do not deserve to know that, because it's not your right. As a man, you've got your own spaces, you've got your own groups. Even the trans groups have their own groups. So they've got their place.
This is the thing as well. This is the thing that gets me when women call the groups that they have women only, but they include people who identify as women. Well, I haven't got anything in common with those people, those men who, and like I haven't, like, providing they're not doing anything harmful, which you can debate whether you think all of them are or none of them are or some of them are. That's a debate. It doesn't matter, because for me, I've got nothing in common with them. If I want to go to a women-only group, then I want it to be all women so that I have shared experiences with that group. And I haven't got anything against them having their own spaces and joining in, but I don't want them to join in with me necessarily. If I go to a mixed sex group, then that's fine. I'm expecting men to be there. But if they say it's women only, then I expect it to be women only.
And that's the choice, isn't it? That's the beauty of having the choice of, so unisex, mixed sex. That's the choice, and you make that choice to go into it. But you can't take away single sex spaces to accommodate somebody wanting it all. Somebody wants everything. That's just not how the world works, and they're going to have to suck it up. They're going to have to understand at one point that we're not playing this game anymore. You know, and we have to be serious about it. And I know we have humour about it, but it's a very, very serious situation, because they're re-traumatizing women that are trying to live through post-traumatic stress disorder, complex stress, young girls that shouldn't be seeing things that they're too young to see. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's just so, it gets very tiring. You get very tired of having to reiterate the same thing. But as the suffragettes did, they fought for 20 odd years to get the vote. And that they didn't get the vote through their activism. They got it on the back of the war, because it was almost like a bargaining tool to say thank you for holding the country down while we all went to war. So we'll give you this little bit of the pie. So we have to look at what women have endured for generations. Like we all love the suffragettes, and the country's quick enough to ride on the coattails of the suffragette movement when it suits, when they want to get a bit of this in.
Yeah.
But they had 20 odd years of battles and losses, and trying to come back constantly, and they did it through the militant suffragettes were excellent. And it's not because we have some women now that want to call them terrorists. Now let's think about that slightly. Yes, it probably wasn't the best choice. You wouldn't do it now, but back then they had no other choice. They didn't have any internet. They didn't have hashtags. They didn't have a social movement. They just had to get things done. And if they
didn't have the vote.
Exactly. And
so now we can use the political system to get what we want as well.
Yes.
To talk about this.
Yes, and be rabble rousers. Be agitators, because if you're not going to agitate, you will not get heard. Because kindness has got us to this point now. Be kind has closed so many women's eyes and so many women's ears and brains to the danger of what it means to lose your rights as a female. Bring the word female back. Definitely. Because woman has also been co-opted by men. But it's a great thing to be part of. You should never be ashamed for attending a Let Women Speak, for attending a conference, or however you choose to do it. You're doing it for the reasons that are right to you, that are honest for your journey in this.
Do you know, sometimes I think, am I really having to say this? That women don't have penises?
Yeah. It's insane, isn't it? And you do find yourself catching yourself several times a day thinking, did I just read that? Did I just listen to that podcast? And when you see stories on the news and you're like, she, and you can blatantly tell it's not a she, and you're like, oh,
I can't watch the news on the TV anymore. I just can't.
No. And X is the place to be for as it happens live, before it gets manipulated by the mainstream media. And obviously, I'm part of the Northern Radfem network, which is honestly, it's like finding your own family. It's like honestly coming home. Me growing up, I kind of latched onto certain things that may give me a sense of belonging. Like I'm a big sports fan, so I'm a rugby league girl through and through. So Salford Rugby League was my everything, and I'm talking for 30 years, nearly 30 years. Well, once I started turfing and coming out, I'm sorry, boys, but it's replaced my rugby team slightly. So when I kind of found I do some work for Women's Rights Network, which I absolutely adore. I do some media and media designs and t-shirt designs for them. And then once I found Northern Radfems, I met these women who were just like me. They speak like me.
Yeah.
We're from the same places. We've experienced the same things. And we sit there and have a coffee and we have a laugh, or we have a pint of Guinness. And honestly, the best kind of women you could ever meet, because they're not in it to cut each other down. They're not in it to stab each other in the back. They're not in it for top dog status. They're in it for each other alone. Like, we stand together, we look after each other, and we get stuff done. And they do it with such great humour, but also they come from a place of survival, overcoming it. Abuse. These are abuse survivors. These are women who have lived through stuff that nobody deserves to live through. But you know what? We do it for each other, and we do it looking at our little girls, thinking, you know what, girls, you're going to be the next generation of Radfems, and you're going to be the next my little turflet, as I call her. She loves what Mama does. She tells everybody, it's just my mama's a suffragette. I said, I'm in love.
And that's what we need to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need to leave the move, like the women's rights, better than when we found it. and progress it, not worse.
Yeah.
So if there's women watching this who want to get involved in the networks that you've talked about,
Yeah.
is there a place that they should go to find those groups?
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
would you like to follow you on
Come
Twitter?
and
or
follow
X?
me. Come and follow me. I am a very, very frequent tweeter. I tweet as much as I think, which is quite a lot through the day. Obviously, I advertise Northern Red Femmes on my page. I work in Women's Rights Network Greater Manchester, which I'm very proud to be part of as well. So yeah, just come and follow me, which I'm sure Kelly will put my details on there. And yeah, so I think mine's Louise WS Salford, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, follow me on my social, and I'll always put you in contact with your local organisations, your grassroots women's rights groups, and please do join one.
It's great.
It's great.
I was just going to say, it's great that we've got such good, strong networks that are building.
Yeah,
and they're getting stronger as time goes on, aren't they?
They are definitely getting stronger, and honestly, do not lose the faith, do not lose your voice, and do not lose your absolute integrity in saying no and being a proud women's rights and feminist. We're taking feminists back. Feminist is being made sexy again. I'm sorry, but it is. Feminism is cool because it belongs to women once more. So take it back and keep doing it with a bit of humour as well, because you should always have a bit of humour about you.
Definitely. Well, thank you for coming on, Louise. It's been lovely to talk to you. I've really enjoyed our chat.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing what you do. You know, we need more voices. We need great women, and you're one of them. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you.